before the tap run dry. Before the tap run dry. Before the tap run dry. Don't bat an eye, this is serious. We running out of water. Try and listen when you hearing this. I hope to make it into this, the future we could reminisce on. Times when life was chess, we made that water a pawn. And that drought is like the queen because she eating us all. I hope you focus on this message you receiving this on. Cause in the high desert, water's scarce. And it seemed like we hardly care. But I'm not innocent cause I use so much water in the day that I could swim in it. So I gotta take a piece of the blame of this predicament. We all do. And the rumors we heard of the drought is all true. This been going for some time, not at all new. I think maybe things could climb if we just all knew we could make a change. In the future we'll see better days. Who get happy when it starts to rain?
Bone-dry conditions up and down the West Coast tonight, and the fears that an already bad drought could get even worse once the summer heat truly takes hold. The drought's impacts clear in places like Folsom Lake, California, critical to the state's water supply. Officials tonight sounding the alarm about the effects of climate change and the new normal that might come with it. Our reports from the critically low reservoir.
Mr. Hoffman and I have done some films in the past together, so we've been talking about it for a while, not only with each other, but with my students here at Canyon. So we're just excited for the possibility of maybe doing this. So
great. Yeah. And Mojave Water District, you want to introduce yourself real quick?
Yes, hi, I'm Yvonne Cox, and this is Charlene Engeron, and we're the public outreach team. And so depending on what we hear today, it will help us determine which of our staff experts are going to be most helpful for the students. So we're excited about it, and I can't wait to see the finished product.
Well, I'm happy to be here and to listen to what you guys have planned.
What you're looking at is basically the water table from the headwaters, because most people, you know, you hear the people talking about where's meat come from? The store. Where's water come from? The tap. That's not exactly, I mean, it's true, but it's not true. When you look at this, the headwaters is actually Lake Arrowhead area, Lake Gregory. And now this doesn't push over into Big Bear, but this is where the water percolates down through the mountain and then comes into Lake Silverwood and into Deep Creek.
Hi, first, my name is Aaliyah Fowler and I'm a student here at Shadow Ridge, and I'm going to be your interviewer today. And I have 8 questions to ask you today.
Okay.
Okay, so are you ready?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so the first question I have is, what is your connection to the high desert, personally or professionally?
Okay, to give you a little history, I came to the high desert in 1980. I was stationed at George Air Force Base. I'm retired Air Force and also a retired steel worker. And to be honest, when I got stationed up here, it was kind of like, where the heck is Air Force sending me? You know, I came from LA originally. Mm-hmm. And once I got up here, I haven't left. I love it up here. I lived in Pinion Hills for 20 years, and then I married my second wife, Shelley, in early 2000, and I moved over here. And with the restaurant, Shelley's Place, it was in such a unique location, Old Town Hesperia over by Sultana High School. Mm-hmm. And I just started questions, and people asked me questions about the history of Hesperia, and it evolved from there. So I'm the local historian here in Hesperia, and also, of course, a resident of Hesperia for about 22 years now, and the high desert for 42.
Okay, that's amazing. Thank you for your wonderful answer. Okay, so the second question I have is describe the water history of the high desert, if you can.
Well, you know, there's actually several facets that you can look at. When you look at the importance of water in general, the human being is in the neighborhood of about 60-65% water. So it's extremely important to us to have water. And I'm kind of strange. I ran some weird numbers. People look about water tables and different things. I kind of look at it like we've got 65 million gallons of water storage above ground. If you take average person, 200 pounds, 60% water, 90,000 people in Hesperia. There's over 1.5 million gallons of water walking around on two legs. So water's important. Hesperia, it's been an issue since the beginning because Hesperia, when it was founded in 1885, was basically just around the corner, not C in Maine, but Maine and Hesperia Road, where the railroad came through. They had to get water to the train. There wasn't well drilling capabilities at that time in 1885. So it came through a trough. They dug alongside the hill up in Deep Creek and rerouted the water over here, 5 miles through an open trough, another 7 miles through piping, and created a reservoir just north of Lime Street Park, and that's how we first got our water. We don't think about it these days. We just turn on the tap.
Right.
And it's going to lead into, I think, some of the other questions you probably have about that and consumptions and things. But throughout history, not only the human being, but animals had to be close to rivers, lakes, different sources of water. As we mechanized and found means of travel, means of carrying it, we moved further away. We had to, such as the flume, reroute it. But then in the early 20s, when drilling became a little bit more prevalent in the technologies, we were able to move away even further because we could drill right in the general locations.
Right.
So water follows us because it's extremely important. You look at historical things, going back to 1860, 50 inches of rain in 4 days over the Inland Empire and high desert. And if you take figures, 1 inch of rain per acre, it ends up in the millions of gallons per acre. But think about the devastation in those. We think about it, look at all that water, but look at the devastation that can happen. More recent photos in 1938, coming through the Mojave River and stuff. So water's got its good points for us because we need it. Too much water, like anything else, can be extremely devastating.
Right. Okay, yeah, thank you. You covered a lot. In your opinion, should residents be worried about the water levels at this time? And if so, depending on your answer, can you explain?
Okay, throughout history, there's always been concerns. Because you take Hesperia's history back to the early 1900s. There are about 400 or 500 people here.
Right.
The rebirth of Hesperia in 1954 went from 400 to 500 to 4,000 to 5,000 in about 5 years. Now you start thinking about the water usage. Now you think where we're at in the neighborhood of 90,000 people. It's always a concern. There's been lawsuits, like in the mid-50s, not to stop growth as a whole, but political powers, they put lawsuits up against M. Penn Phillips saying there's not enough water to do what he wanted to do to build out. Now that build out wasn't all in Penn Phillips. Lot size and everything else goes back to plot maps of 1888 from Robert McClay Whitney. So what they found is after they stalemated M. Penn Phillips and he moved on, we've got articles in the museum saying, oh, there was enough water to do what he was planning on doing. So I'm not saying that there's not enough water. I'm saying that people have different views of how much is proper, and you have to take all those different looks or views and come up to your own conclusion of, is there enough of whatever? But historically, it's always been an issue. Logically, we have to look at any of our resources and manage them properly, just as we do in our daily lives.
So the first question that I have is, what is your connection to the high desert personally or professionally?
Okay, I have two connections, the personal and the professional. I've lived in the high desert for about 35 years. Okay, so now you can start adding up how old I am. And so I've grown to love it. When I first moved out here, I thought, why are we doing this? But I've just recognized there's some amazing people who live up here. You have closer communities. And so I've really spent a lot of my career here. So I have worked up here in the high desert in different capacities. So I've worked for the city of Victorville, the town of Apple Valley, and now with the Mojave Water Agency.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that with me. Okay, so the next question that I have for you is, describe the history of water in the high desert.
The history of water is really fascinating here because we look at what we have right now and it looks like, oh my gosh, there's nothing but dirt, okay? But at one point in time, believe it or not, people in the LA area called this area of the high desert the Garden of Eden.
Oh, wow.
Okay, and here's why. Because there used to be a whole lot of agriculture. You still see some remnants of it now, but there was a lot of farmers who were growing alfalfa, apples, pears, grapes. So it was an agricultural area. There were also people who had a lot of farms. There was a lot of, dairy, not dairy, but people were raising cattle, that type of thing. In fact, the apples were so well known because they won a prize for the best apples at a fair in 1911. And so that's how we kind of started out, and then a lot of people started coming. But what happened is more people came, we put a strain on the water supply. And in 1960, statewide, there were different groups that decided to form. So there was some legislation that would create water agencies. So the voters of this area voted in 1960 to form the Mojave Water Agency. And with that, the agency is charged with doing everything they can to ensure a sustainable water supply. Okay, with that, once they made that decision, we also joined this group, and it's called the State Water Contractors, and there's 29 of us. And what we did in 1960 is we made a huge commitment as a region. We said, we're gonna help fund the State Water Project in the state of California, okay? And the State Water Project is a system of canals and dams and lakes and reservoirs, as well as the pipelines that transport the water from Northern California, where all the snow is at, to Southern California that really needs it. So we're a member of that group. So we paid to be able to help build a system, and then we actually pay to be a part of the system on an annual basis. And so what happened, that was like the phase one, if you will, of the Mojave Water Agency. Phase two happened when too many people were pumping water, and now we were worried about running out of water. And so at that point, there was a group in Barstow who said, they're gonna sue everybody in the Victor Valley because you're taking our water. So it was a time to pause to say, who's using water and how much should you use? what that did is it led to court action. And in 1996, the courts helped us establish what your water rights were when you bought a piece of land. So it told you how much you could pump. And what they did is they took everyone who had pumping rights and they set the amount that they could pump. And what that did is it formed a system where we could determine if we have enough water. So we divided our whole service area, which is 4,900 square miles, primarily the whole Victor Valley area is what we did though, and we created what we call 5 sub-areas. So we divided up into different areas that may have a different hydrogeology. What's going on, underground? Where's their water getting fed from? Our water comes from 2 major sources. Primarily, we have an underground water supply, which is why we don't have pretty lakes that you're out doing your boat on, okay? But that water supply actually comes from the San Bernardino Mountains, from the snow melt. So when it snows, even though we don't get it here, we're like, yay, we have water, okay? Then the next source of water supply is, remember when we became a state water contractor and we helped pay to transport water? Well, what we do is we actually buy water. So when it's a wet year and the prices are down of water, we say, okay, we're going to buy water. And what we do is we store it here, not in lakes, we store it underground because our geology here is perfect for underground storage. It is natural. It's like there's these natural water banks that people can't see, but that's where our water is stored. So when people pump, that's where their water comes from. And so that's how we were formed and why we were formed, and that's our function. So we need to ensure that we do have a sustainable water supply. And we have to answer every year to a judge at the court, and we have to show them those 5 sub-areas. And what the judge did is he determined how much you could pump. Do you have a glass of water here or a bottle of water? And the judge said, you can only pump this much water. So if you pumped too much and you have this much to replace, then we've got to replace that water. And we go through that annual process to make sure that we will have enough water for the people that we have here.
Right, thank you. I completely understood, and you gave a very well thought out answer to that one. And so the next question that I have for you is, what is the #1 user of water in the high desert?
I can answer that one for you. By far, our biggest users are our residential customers.
Right.
So any home in our area, they are showering and they're brushing their teeth and all of that. Also, the landscape maintenance that they're doing, all of that uses the majority of their water. And so you may not think about turning on the faucet and getting a glass of water and brushing your teeth. All of that comes from that underground water supply that she was talking about. So our homes by far use the most water. Second to that would be things like golf courses and our industrial area.
Okay, thank you for that. Yeah, because I know, in my household, so much water is used, and I just know. And so the next question that I have is, California has been experiencing what's called a mega-drought, and I just want to know what makes this drought so dangerous.
Okay, what makes this drought dangerous is anytime you have a prolonged drought, then you are reducing that water supply, okay? We are all used to the ebb and flow. We get the rain, we have, that water supply, it goes up, then we have periods of dryness. But because we have been in a period here in California now for an extended period of time, that's what has everybody a little bit concerned about this drought. And because we're also dealing with issues like global warming, so we need to make sure that we are correctly planning for droughts, and we do.
Okay, so the next question that I have for you is, what are the current water conservation efforts in the high desert, and have they been effective?
So we've been doing a lot of messaging regarding the conservation because it's so important. I know that we just got rain a couple of weeks ago, and people may be sort of dropping their guard, but it's so important that we continue to conserve water. And we ask people to do that by cutting back use in their homes, being very, very mindful of the water that they use. And also, a lot of technology has come out that reduces water use naturally, whether it's low flow toilets or, and not just in the homes, also in businesses. There's a lot of technology that's come out to help our businesses reduce the amount of water that they need to use in their systems. So those are the two biggest areas that we've been working on, and as the Mojave Water Agency, we're guardians of the water source, so you may not see MWA on your retail water bill. We're making sure that your water provider has water in our area. So we might not be top of mind as far as every month when you're paying your bill, but we are out there trying to create an awareness for using less water in general. So that's one of our really big functions, is to help teach people how to conserve their water use.
Well, I want to thank you for doing that, because it's really important that we have water, because we really need it. And so the next question that I have is, in your opinion, should residents be worried about our water levels at this time? And could you explain your answer?
It is a two-part answer I have. It's yes and no. And I will tell you, no, they do not need to be worried about it for the foreseeable future. We are regulated by the state of California to put together what's called an urban water management plan. And what that does is we bring all of the key people together in the room and say, okay, are you gonna build? Okay, are you gonna have some more industry? All of this takes water. Okay, so we have to put together those projections of how much water they're going to use. So once we do that, we are able to look at how much water we think is going out, and based on those projections of what we have, how much normal water supply we have, and are we gonna need to buy water to make sure that we're even on our water supply cup, if you will. And so right now, our 2022 Urban Water Management Plan shows that we have enough water to sustain us, as long as all those projections that everybody plays are good, to 2065.
Oh,
okay? Yes, and again, remember I told you that when it's a wet year, we buy water and we put it in our bank account underground for those dry years, and that's what we do. And so we are in pretty good shape. However, if we continue to see a prolonged drought, that means that 2065 number will obviously start moving back. And then we will hit that crossover line of how much water we have and how much is the demand for that water. But we are on it. We have an amazing team of scientists where we work, and they are on it, and they continually monitor our water levels.
Okay, when you said that you had to buy water, where do you buy it from, and how much does it normally cost?
Okay, so we buy water from the state of California. Okay, and so again, that's water that they have a big supply from the Northern California water. So we buy that water from them, and of course, how does it get here, right? Well, you know when you're driving on the I-15 and you see the aqueduct?
Yes.
Okay, well that's one of the major conveyance systems, that transportation system.
Okay.
The Mojave Water Agency built 2 pipelines, one to the Morongo Basin out in the Yucca Valley area, and then one in the Victor Valley area. Okay, so then that water is transported through those pipelines to the areas that need it. And so it depends on how much the water is, how much we pay for it, and how much is actually available to us. In a very dry year, sometimes they'll tell us, you can't buy any water from us because there's not enough water for you all to buy. Remember, there's that 29-member group that we're a part of. We can all buy water. But if there's not enough water and it's a very low year, they tell us we can't buy any water. So it really does depend on what the supply is at that time.
Okay, well, thank you for answering that. I was really curious about that. That's kind of different. I never heard that before.
Yes.
Okay, so the next question that I have for you is, what impact could future growth such as the Tap Street project have an abundance on the water in the high desert?
Okay, projects, that plan I talked to you about, the urban water management
Right.
plan,
Mhm.
those projects are placed in that plan. So our current water management plan has the Tapestry project in there. What is really great is that the state of California put together a couple of laws. We call them Show Me the Water laws.
Mhm.
And so what that says is if you want to build in California, and you're gonna build over 199 units, you have to demonstrate your water supply. You just can't assume it's there. So we need to see the paperwork where your water supply is coming from. So for example, because Tapestry's in Hesperia, Hesperia did prove that they have the water, and they have made their own water purchases, okay? And so it could have been that there's a landowner in the nearby area, and they sold water, those water rights to the city of Hesperia. So now Hesperia has that water in their water bank, if you will, and that meets the requirements for that building to take place. And so, yes, without enough water, it can stop growth if there is not enough water. So, but we have really worked very hard to ensure that we do have that water supply. And as Charlene talked about, the importance of conservation, it is very important that we continue to do that because it does affect ultimately the amount of water supply that we have that could limit growth if we do not keep an eye on that.
Hi, I'm Ms. Janowitz, and I'm a science teacher here, and so students should be concerned about a drought and even their water use because the reality is that it's their future. And so I try and teach students that if they pay attention to how much water they're using now, it's going to ensure that there's going to be water for them in the future.
Hi, thank you everyone for coming. We're super excited to have this film get started underway. Our students are getting very valuable skills and experiences with interviewing professionals in the field. We're very grateful to the Water Agency and also to the history of Hesperia City to come out and be part of this. Our students in the back that are working the cameras, we are really thankful for you guys because this film will not be made without the technical skills. And Mr. Hoffman,
Before the tap run dry,
with the various other schools we are working with, also Canyon Risk, part of this, trying to put this together.
Before
Bring awareness
the tap run dry. Don't bat an eye, this is serious. We running out of water. Try and listen when you hearing this. I hope to make it into this. The future we could reminisce on. Times when life was chess, we made that water upon. And that drought is like the queen because she eating us all. I hope you focus on this message you receiving this on. Cause in the high desert, water's scarce. And it seemed like we hardly care. But I'm not innocent cause I use so much water in the day that I could swim in it. So I gotta take a piece of the blame of this predicament. We all do. And the rumors we heard of the drought is all true. This been going for some time, not at all new. I think maybe things could climb if we just all knew we could make a change. In the future, we'll see better days. Who get happy when it starts to rain?
Bone dry conditions up and down the West Coast tonight, and the fears that an already bad drought could get even worse once the summer heat truly takes hold. The drought's impacts clear in places like Folsom Lake, California, critical to the state's water supply. Officials tonight sounding the alarm about the effects of climate change and the new normal that might come with it. Our Serene Shaw reports from the critically low reservoir.